there's a lot in that reading from Colossians. And one thing that struck me while I was looking at it afresh was the amount of change and relocation that happens in the Christian life. We have been raised with Christ, the reading tells us. So as the journey that Christ takes goes down into the depths of death and hell and up into the heights of heaven and glory, so we follow that same movement through our baptism. That's the symbolism we invoke when we baptize, that a person enters the water in one state of life and being and exits in another, that we go down into the depths with Christ and then we are raised with Christ. So we are relocated, and this reading tells us that we need to seek the things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God, because that's our destination. Now, I can remember being taught a golf lesson a very long time ago. I used to play golf. I wasn't very good at it. I used to whack the ball all over the place, and I was one of those people who needed the long stick with the scoopy thing on the end because I was forever going in the water and having to fish my golf balls out of the water. And I can remember on this particular occasion I was on the driving range with my club all lined up and what have you, trying to whack this ball, and it was going this way and that way and the other way and every way but where I wanted it to. And they had, pro I suppose golf tutors or whatever wandering along, and one of them stopped, because obviously my golf was so bad that he couldn't not say anything, and he stopped and he said, bear in mind that where you point your club is where the ball's going to go. So he said, where you end your swing and your club is pointed, that's where your ball's going to go, so you need to think about your feet and you need to think about your angle of your club. Now it sounds really obvious, but I've often thought that's a useful lesson in life as well. If we point towards where we want to end up, we'll end up there. Now again, it's obvious, isn't it? It's like when you walk down the street. Yeah? If your feet are pointing right, you'll go right. If your feet are pointing left, you'll go left. If your feet are pointing straight ahead, you'll go straight ahead. Yeah? It's the same with your car and your steering wheel, or your boat and your tiller. Now, the other lesson that I recall when I read this is a lesson that my first driving instructor gave me. And she said, don't drive the road right in front of you. Pick the furthest bit of the road you can see and look there. Because then you will not only see the things in front of you, you'll also see everything before it happens. So if there's an accident up the road, you get extra time to react if you're looking at that far distant point and taking in everything from here to there, rather than if you're only looking 2 or 3 cars ahead, because then you're constantly jumping on the brakes and reacting to things and not giving yourself enough time. And again, it sounds obvious, doesn't it? But if we keep our eyes on that distant horizon, which is our life in eternity, which is our life with God in the heavenly places, then we'll see all the barriers between here and there, we'll see all the roadblocks, we'll see what's coming to a certain extent and be able to respond rather than react. And we will see things in perspective of that distance. Now, up north where one of my friends lives, in Cumbria, Alston in Cumbria, which is apparently the highest parish above sea level, they have some really fun roads. They have what the children used to call car-eating roads, where the dip is so steep that actually there can be a car in the dip, but when you look at the road straight on, it just looks like a straight piece of road with nothing on it. And then suddenly this car will come up to the top of the hill and appear almost from nowhere, because it's come up such a steep gradient that you couldn't see it beforehand. And that's a little bit like life sometimes, isn't it? Life has ups and downs that can occasionally be so severe that something comes at us almost from nowhere. And we react. We react to circumstances. If you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above. That's really great advice, but we are also told that we must put to death whatever in us is earthly: fornication, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed, which is idolatry. Get rid of anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive language, and do not lie. Now, if you think about it, it's a bit like when I'm driving my car along one of those roads, I always double check my brakes. Before I travel up north to be with my friends, I always double check my brakes just to make sure they're in tip-top condition, because I know that on those roads I'm going to use them more. I'm going to need them more in a 1 in 3. I'm going to rely on them when a car appears seemingly out of nowhere out of one of those dips. And I'm going to need them more on unfamiliar roads and on a long journey. Now, checking our life against that checklist is a little bit like checking the brakes on your car, or your oil, or your water in your radiator, or your tread on your tyres. Yeah? If you check those things, then even when life throws you a curveball and things come at you unexpectedly, you are still in a better position to react. And again, it seems obvious, doesn't it? Yeah? Now, I don't know if you, like me, get these letters from the surgery periodically, inviting you to the sort of doctor's equivalent of an MOT check, a health check, where they, take the blood pressure and what have you and do various tests. I've just had another one sent through for me. It always sends me into fits of giggles because it's a slow week when I'm not down the surgery at the moment. I think they're sick to death of me. But it's a standard letter that is sent out to everybody in particular age bands at particular intervals to remind us to check our general health, even if we don't think anything is wrong. Even if there isn't a red light blinking on the dashboard, don't wait till there is. Even if our health is not giving us symptoms that are causing us major concern, if you attend to the minor things, they won't get major. Or that's the rationale, isn't it? And so St. Paul is giving us this list to check ourselves against. Now, I'm guessing that not many of us are going out and committing major fornication during the weekend. I don't know, maybe your lives are more exciting than mine, but I'm certainly not going out committing major fornication during the weekend. I'm not so roughy that I'm getting in my car and ramming people off the road. I am not so full of malice and slander that I'm permanently starting horrendous gossip campaigns against innocent people. And when you read a list like that, and those words are kind of extreme, we have a tendency to just let that wash over us and think, well, clearly that doesn't apply to me. Meek, mild little me. I'm not a fornicator, I'm not malicious, I'm not abusive, I'm not a liar. But do you know what? I am all those things a little bit. And I think possibly you are too. Because there are stages, aren't there? When we make our confession, we talk about thought, word and deed, don't we? We talk about the sins of the thoughts, the sins of the words and the sins of the deeds. And actually they're kind of a process, if you like. If I, for example, watch a lot of films, read a lot of books and spend time with a lot of people who focus on a particular thing, that particular thing is going to be circling around in my thoughts. Now, if that's good stuff, if it's, fluffy kitten pictures and feel-good stuff and really positive things and what have you, then I'm going to be swimming in positive, lovely things. And that's all great. But life isn't like that, is it? Because you no sooner turn on the news than all the darker and negative things come at you. So we can't just put spiritual headphones on and feed ourselves only what is fluffy and nice and sparkly, because that puts us out of touch with the real world. But equally, we cannot allow our thoughts to circle darkly around the worst things in humanity. Because if we do that, they become what we think about, and what we think about becomes what we talk about, and what we talk about becomes part of who we are. And who we are influences what we do and what we allow to be done, because that's the other aspect of it, isn't it? We can allow ourselves to slide into thinking that certain things are acceptable. So, for example, do not slander. Well, I don't go out of my way to slander people, But I occasionally might pass on things that somebody else has told me without really checking terribly carefully if they're true, particularly if it's a person I trust. I might share things on the internet and then think, oh, actually, I'm not sure of the accuracy of that thing I've just shared. Now, when I first came here, I was told by somebody, if you fall over on the waterfront, then you've got a broken leg by the time it gets to the high street, and by the time it reaches All Saints, you're dead. Gossip can snowball, can't it? As each person does a little bit, each person passes a little bit along. And bear in mind, when Paul writes, he doesn't write just to people as individuals, he writes to the body of Christ collectively. We mustn't be a magnification chamber for gossip. We must instead ask ourselves, why am I sharing it? And is it true? And is it helpful? And is it kind? Anger. In your anger, do not sin, says the Bible. And do not give the devil a foothold. Not don't be angry, we're going to be angry, it's part of human nature. But don't dwell on it, don't polish it, don't stoke it. Yeah? How much angry, moany conversation do we have versus positive, constructive conversation? So, in all of this, I guess what I'm saying is, on the road of life, we have two things to be mindful of. And the first is the direction we're pointing in, and seeing that big picture and looking towards that horizon, and just making sure that our trajectory, our direction overall is right. And if something is slightly off from that direction, a little bit of a wiggle in the road is okay, because some roads aren't straight. But you're going to get to your destination in the end, even if you take a wiggly bit of a detour and then get back on track. But if you take a road that's going in the opposite direction, that's less helpful. So check your ultimate direction. Am I travelling in the right direction? Is this going to get me there where I want to be? Or is this going to divert me and take me off in unhelpful ways? And then the second part of your spiritual health check is, what about the little nibbles in my soul? Like the little funny knocking noises in your car, or the bit of bald tread on your tyres. Yeah? Is my soul storm ready? Am I ready for those roads that are a bit more roller coaster than road? Am I ready for things to get tough? Are all my health checks in place? Or do I have some slightly unhelpful habits of negative thinking, or fibbing, or fudging, or not reading my Bible as much as I should, or not turning to God in prayer? And check ourselves. Let's check ourselves. Against this list, honestly. And let's ask ourselves, are any of these things creeping in? Even just a little bit. Even just a little bit. Because we have a God who cares about the state of our soul and our ultimate destination. And so let us match that care that God shows with our own care and attentiveness. Give yourself a spiritual MOT this week and take time to reflect on your life, your habits, and your thoughts. Amen.